At around 1:22, Mr. Crowder's show Louder with Crowder, Jordan Peterson said something that explains what happened to me during the attack against me. He explains how it's not talking about the trauma you experience that matters, it's understanding it. And I learned this the hard way through actually experiencing, trying to figure this out. In the mobbing and gangstalking that I experienced, I had a hard time understanding what was happening and what was going to happen. Later on, I found out how this worked, with severe gangstalking and mobbing, and our mind manipulating attack. I was so destroyed by the attack in 2003 to 2006 that I couldn't really find out at that time. I was just trying to stay above water and not either end my life or have my life ended by a third party. Trying to figure out how to do it properly or who to trust. Around 2006 is one of the first time I think I really heard the word mobbing. And I started to study it. At least that's the first time I remember doing that. The more I learned of mobbing, the more I was healed and strong enough to write my own experiences properly. Then gangstalking came around, the word gangstalking came around with the word mobbing, and then things started to sort of make sense. But it was too tame of an attack. They were talking very tamely about it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. The gangstalkings on here seem very governmentally controlled from some organization up high. They seem too Countel pro whatever. They seem too systematic. What was against me wasn't as systematic as what they were saying. And I knew it was a hybrid of the Countel Proto or whatever it's called and the mobbing. I knew it grew into something greater and more dangerous. And remember before in my earlier stories, I told you that the left told me this was going to be a new type of attack. So I started to realize, wow, unions, leftist organizations, they're testing out this attack. This is true what they told me. This is when I started to realize what I was told was true and what I was told was not true. And I started to be able to distinguish between the two. Things started to make more sense at this time. Then I came across these books in a library a little later on called Mind Manipulation. I don't know who it's by. I think it's by Sheffield, maybe. And also something called Brainwashed, The Secret History of Mind Control by, I don't know who that's by either. I don't remember. It's like a 2006 book and it's like a 1960s book. You're going to have to look into those. Mind Manipulators and Brainwashed. And then it started giving me proof of what gangstalking, mobbing, and the socialist gulags were. And I started to put them together, and I started to realize, wow, this is actually a ship you can create. This is actually a perfect vessel that's been created to work inside the American justice system, and American ideology, and American conscience. And it works in the middle of it, being completely see-through. It's almost transparent, and it's amazingly so. Many things fell away, and I started to be able to piece the truth away from the lies that were created around me. This is also when I tried to getting help for my story out in earnest. Many of the most severe attacks were done around me at this time, and I was trying to explain what was happening, but I started to sort of lie to people or not tell the whole story because the whole story sounded so severe. You don't talk about child abuse or children being abused around you unless you want to be looked at queer and you're considered a liar, crazy, or a child abuser yourself. So you're like, you start to back off telling the truth because the truth is actually makes you look evil. It's a very smart way to attack someone, actually. Then I started to realize that this is when I started to realize about the Go Zinching, and his story actually had child abuse in it. And I'm like, wow, that makes sense. So if you take a mobile gulag, put it in China outside the gulags they normally have, put it in the Chinese system, of course those children will be abused. That makes perfect sense. Just like the people who attack him are abusing their own children by having them abuse Go Xinxing. They're purposely using their children as child abuse victims. And I thought, wow, just make that a sexual child abuser, or a pedophile, or let's say a sociopath or a psychopath. And you could use sexual child abuse to manipulate people, including children who are above, let's say, above pedophilic age, more like in the teens. Or you could use children who are even pedophilic age to abuse your so-called target of this gang stalking. Because who's going to believe them? Who's going to think that that would be that actually work that way? Who's going to believe anyone's that evil? And then if they have people who are helping the attack, who's going to believe those people would allow it? Because you have to realize, in a gang stalking attack, some people might be doing it, and some people might not believe it or might not know they're doing it. So you have this sort of belief in some of the people in the attack enough to believe the whole attack is moral or normal or honorable. But the good moral ones might be giving shade or comfort to those who are doing real sadistic evil within an attack like a gang stalking or a mobile ghoul. Now for this Now for the Jordan Peterson clip talking about the psychology of people understanding their attack gives them more of a, or situation gives them more of a more of their humanity back than actually talking about it.
They're not going to come forward. That's an irony. That's why Medicare shrinks.
There's also no bloody evidence that discussing your feelings is effective psychologically.
Right.
So what's effective psychologically seems to be a lot more coherently cognitive than that. So, for example, there's a good body of research done by James Pennebaker at the University of Texas at Austin, and he actually tested to find out whether the expression of feelings had a curative consequence, and what he found that wasn't it at all. Like, if you face something in your past that really bothers you, let's say, and you discuss it, you get better if you build a causal model of what happened, so that you can understand the forces that were at play, so that you can eliminate the forces that weren't at play, so it's not as confusing, and so that you learn how to avoid that in the future. Yes. So it's actually the development of cognitive understanding that's useful from a clinical perspective, and not the expression of feelings.
Right. Let me clarify something there.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead. What I meant when I was talking about feelings, I meant men tend to, and you know this, we've talked, men.
Anyway, thank you very much for your help. God bless.